Brett, go ahead, Brett. Where were we?
I don't know when it ran out.
17 minutes. So we were talking about, well, I want to know what you think about the future of biodynamics in Western Australia.
Oh, okay. Now, one of my little things that's going on in my head recently is this idea that for a lot of us, we tend to get sort of stuck on one sort of paradigm, whereas what's happening now is that there's so many different paradigms that are all sort of moving towards sustainable agriculture or even regenerative agriculture. And so I view biodynamics as an important part of this whole process, but not necessarily an entity in itself. So I think now what we'll see is a lot more people talking about all different types of paradigms and
Well, like quantum agriculture, which is biodynamics and beyond.
yes. So basically, I mean, my view for the future is there's no such thing as organic. All that bureaucratic rubbish goes out the window, and we have just people that are focused on biological farming and whatever medium they can use to achieve that. So that everyone's farming thinking is about, well, how do we support the soil and the plants and the animals, and so everything we do sort of moves to that betterment. So sometimes if things get out of kilter or we have some situation where we may need to use, for instance, a herbicide, where we're going to use it very thoughtfully and we'll weigh up the whole process. Like, if I use this, how much will it set me back? And we'll do this balancing act. So what it means is people will be a lot more flexible. They'll have a lot more tools to utilise, but they're not just going to rush towards chemicals because they know what the long-term impact will be. But we'll have them there in our toolbox. And I'm sure the chemical company's not going to like this, but I think already we can see some of the big chemical companies moving towards biological inputs. I mean, Bayer, for instance, has just released something now that's sort of moves in that biological field, and I think you'll see more and more of these big corporations moving in that direction.
You know, that's how our quantum agriculture works, is first about how do plants grow, taking in everything you teach us about the whole biochemistry behind it. And then we add, the biological growing, then the biodynamic. See, because like Hugh says, biodynamic works when you have something to organize. A lot of people want to take blank soil, pour biodynamics and think, well, that's that.
And I've seen that mistake. A lot of people say, oh, we want this, biodynamics will fix our situation. I mean, here in Western Australia, we only have a really tiny window of when you can actually work with the biology, unless you're irrigating. Because we have this period during winter where we get rain and it's cold, and then there's this little bit at the end of winter into spring where we get this great ideal time for biology to flourish, and then it's gone. It dries up, and then that's it. So it's really hard to develop soils here. Whereas compared to the East Coast, where they have more rain during the warmer periods, they get much more response from their biodynamic inputs. So we hear all the stories over there, but you don't see that sort of impact here. We don't get these dramatic impacts here. They're definitely, I see it works, but it's not to the same extent that we hear other people having. And so people have got to keep that in mind. And you're right, you still have to do, I mean, as Steiner said in the past, we're overlaying the biodynamic practice over traditional agriculture.
Well, I mean, Hugh it's very good. One of our classes is biodynamics has the tools that make organics work.
Yes, and that's a term we've used. And I've certainly seen that. I've seen our organic friends who've been farming, and I just go, oh, guys, if you just tweaked it a little bit by using biodynamics, there's a few little issues there that it just work better for you. Yeah. So, issues that I'm not having because I'm doing it biodynamically. But for them, they just don't, that extra effort of actually going out there and spraying the preparations.
Yeah, but then they'll end up spraying pesticides instead.
Oh, these are organic. No, these are, for them it's just an extra bit that's just, for them it's too much. Yeah. But my argument is that once you put the effort in and have it set up, then it's fine. It's not a difficult process. You just go and fill the vat up, push the switch, and it all starts stirring. Go and have a cup of coffee and meander back, and then go out and spray it. It's not that big a deal. Most of it's just developing the willpower to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly the biggest problem for everyone, I think, is generating will. It's one thing that we all have to actually work on and generate. For most people, it's not just something that falls out of the sky and off we go with, here's some willpower. Let's use that. We actually have to generate that from ourselves. So there's so many obstacles to that, of course. So like in my case, it's a nice evening for flying. I feel a little bit tired. Maybe I'll just sit down and have a beer and watch the sunset. There's all those little things that get in the way.
No, you got a type A wife. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. True. But also, if you want things to work well, you've just got to put that effort in.
Yeah.
Once you know that biodynamics does help the situation, then it doesn't take too much effort to actually get it to happen. Yeah. So, So I don't know whether in the previous little bit before it shut down, we were talking about what I do here. So I'll just go over. I mean, what we do on Dugite Farm is, and I'm fourth generation on this farm. So my great grandfather bought it back in 1903, and he came out from Ireland, and he wasn't a farmer, but I think he must have always wanted to be one. So after he went to the goldfields, he moved down to this area. And fortunately, he arrived in winter because he was out towards the coastal plains, and it was all sort of wet and soggy and flooded. And he looked towards the hills and came up into the hills. So for me, that's been awesome because the beauty up here in the hills and the fact that it's above the frost line means that you can grow a lot more things that others can't, and it's a lot more comfortable. Albeit you've got to work on slopes, so you've got issues there with trying to reduce erosion, etc., etc. So what we mainly grow here is potatoes and butternut pumpkins and cabbage, cauliflower and broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
So our main crops are cabbage. We grow them for a young couple that are producing fermented cabbage products. And so there's a strong demand in that area. So they've gone from being quite small to continually phoning me up, we need to get bigger, and I keep telling them we need to get more farmers, because to rely on one farmer to do all this
That's right.
not good for his business, because everyone needs a break. So we're working on that now to see if we can get other farmers involved, and also over a bigger geographical area, so that we can encompass
And would you have them be biodynamic farmers too?
Not necessarily. It'd be ideal, but no, for them it doesn't matter as long as the cabbages are grown, cleanly. Although one thing that they've noticed, because they have picked up cabbages from another farmer, and they noted that their cabbages were lighter, they weren't as dense, and they had to actually add liquid to their product, whereas our cabbage was a lot denser, and if anything, they had too much liquid. And so they had to change their fermentation and the time that it took. Ours took a lot longer to ferment than what the other organic growers did. So what's going on there, I don't know. Maybe there's more in what we've got, or I don't know.
I noticed when I started eating biodynamic produce from Hughes Farm, was you can eat like a third less,
yes,
and be absolutely full and nourished.
Yes. Now I've heard that from other. When I did my thesis in New Zealand, that was some of the comments that the farmers made. We don't feel like we don't eat as much as we used to. So, and I've noticed that with the difference of buying biodynamic bread. For instance, it took for me 2 pieces of toast in the morning is enough to keep me going till lunchtime. Whereas if I had just an ordinary piece of bread on morning tea, I'm starving. It just doesn't have that substance, or it just doesn't have it to keep you going. So yeah.
So what's your succession plan?
Well, it's in my head. It would be ideally that the children take on the farm, and whether they continue with vegetables or whatever, I don't know. I'd rather that they come up with their own creative ideas like we have, and I'd like them to have to just to think like that they have the space to do that. Not necessarily take on what I've done, but I certainly hope they continue with the biodynamic model.
Did they know about how to make the preps and how to use them?
They've all been involved. As much as they hated, sitting there packing cow horns, I always thought it was a bit weird. But a few times we've had friends come along with similar age children who got really excited and enthusiastic about it, and they went, "Oh, you don't think this is weird? Oh, okay. Blah blah blah." So they got into it as well. So yeah, no, they're all aware of what to do and what goes on. It's like for myself, I grew up on the farm, but wasn't really trained or knew anything about it. But when I went away and helped friends in New Zealand and other farms, I was surprised like how much I knew about practical things like fencing and tractor driving. There's so much that was sort of I'd learnt just by being there. And I think that's the same with the children. I'm often surprised, particularly when we've had visitors come and they start talking about, like they go around with the visitors on the farm and talking about what goes on. The visitors come back, were really surprised how much knowledge they had about what was going on, as was I. Oh, really? You did listen. So it's from that point of view, I think that because they've grown up in this environment, it'll just be there. Whether they have the will to do it or not is another question. But I can't imagine they're going to go down a conventional road. So I think they've seen enough to know that that's not the road to go down. So that's kind of my succession idea, if it works out that way. So the ideal for me would be that I'd stay on the farm and they take on more responsibility, and I'll sort of hang around as the mentor and the helper. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I see the future going.
That's how John Priestley ended up doing it, but he doesn't have a successor.
Yeah. So it's a different. And even if they don't wish to continue it on, I'd want them to just either lease it. Mm-hmm. Lease out maybe to someone who is more enthusiastic, because it's possible their children might be wanting to do it. And I think they'll get it as we go into the future. To have property and land that you can do what you want is such a privilege that for many people there's no way that they'll ever be able to afford such a thing. And we look at the world at the moment, there's one of all the things that are declining, there's so many things that are, the mining industry's declining, the building industry's declining, the jobs just aren't there, but there's one thing that is still going, which is agriculture.
People need to eat.
That's right. And that's, if anything, getting stronger. So we're getting, a lot of farmers now are getting reasonable prices, particularly with beef and sheep, that actually makes it worthwhile to continue, whereas it wasn't many years ago where it was people were just like, well, what are we doing this for? Why are we here? Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely change in the air, and I think that's driven by the rest of the world wanting food.
So how would people come and study with you?
In the past, people have actually, I've had 2 apprentices, and so there's a girl from Ireland and a girl from the States in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So they've stayed with us during the period from when we start making preparations through to the end of winter, and so they've gone through that whole process. So they've been involved with planting, weeding, growing, spraying, making the preparations. So we do take on people if they're keen.
And you have courses here too, don't you?
Yeah, we have had. We haven't had in the last couple of years, but it's our plan.
Well, Hugh Lovell teaches here once in a while.
Well, that's true. Hugh was here last year. We've had another course run here. We actually set up a training room.
Yep.
So we have a space now. So that was important. And now we're working on the accommodation so that people can have accommodation to stay and so on. So as we finish that off, then we'll focus more on that kind of thing, working more
Hey,
on.
we can camp. We're big people.
Yeah. So I sort of see that more down the road. So in the next few years, that will probably be take more of a priority. So at the moment, we're just still focusing on getting the whole place ship shape.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this time of year is quite difficult because it's harvest time. There's so many different things to harvest, so it's quite intense. This sort of April-May period. Pumpkins, potatoes. Once they're harvested, then it's just the cabbage, which is once a month. Then we can focus more on infrastructure.
So you grow cabbage year round?
We did, but we discovered that particularly not this summer, but the summer before. So the summer of 2015 was really hot, and cabbage just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
With the heat, what was happening, we were getting tip burn inside, which is like the cabbage was growing so fast and there wasn't enough calcium coming through to the new growing tips that they basically died off.
Oh.
So the result was you had these beautiful looking cabbage on the outside, but when you sliced them open, they were full of like dead black bits all through.
Well, you know what he would say about that.
Oh yes, yeah.
What?
That you need more boron.
Boron. I mean, we go around opening up vegetables, brown inside, boron deficiency. Open up a slice of strawberry. See that collar part?
Yeah.
Boron deficiency. Yeah.
But we're also getting actually external sunburn as well.
Yeah.
So it was a combination thing. So we've decided that it's too difficult to grow during summer with cabbage. So so we're moving away from that.
Yeah.
So that's becoming our rest period. So pretty well we're not harvesting anything from
Time to go to New Zealand.
or wherever. But or just to relax. So pretty well from December